the illusion of the separation of church and state. Modern societies generally acknowledge the principle of the separation of church and state. The origin of this common principle was in the early conflicts that arose between traditional religious institutions and the emerging powers of secular scientism and technology. In the historical transition of mankind from the cultic religious basis of ancient societies to the scientific and technological basis of modern secular societies, the old religions balked at some of the implications of the new knowledge. Therefore, if scientific technology were to provide the basis for the new era of man, the dominance of the social order by the authority of official cultic religion had to be brought to an end. The principle of the separation of church and state is simply the civilized device created to permit the transition from a religious to a secular order of society. Ever since this principle became the working norm, cultic religion itself has been gradually diminished in power and secularized in its content. And the new knowledge of science, which provides the dogmatic basis for which is in effect a new church, or official way of knowing and living, has become more and more a critic of cultic religion. Indeed, the scientific establishment and its spawn of university intellectualism and large-scale technical and industrial enterprise have displaced the ancient culture of religion. In fact, the principle of the separation of church and state is itself only a strategy for excluding conventional or cultic religion from the creative position of authority over the proceedings of society in general. Truly, that principle does not apply to the official church of secular society. The state is always in league with the official church of scientific materialism in all modern industrial societies, and the authority and authenticity of every religion other than science is fundamentally excluded by the dominant church. The rule of science moves over the world with the heavy hand of state power, creating scandal and doubt and fear in every area of independent cultural creativity. And all religions are forced to suffer the plundering by this new church, or else convert and be transformed into a species of the new faith. As a result, we find that certain religious cults have submitted to a high degree of containment by the secular forces, and so they have been granted a kind of official status as allowable cults. Such is true of mainstream Christianity and Judaism in much of the Western world. However, even these, along with the other cults of the great religions, are the subjects of oppression in those secular societies in which the church of scientific materialism is most clearly in power, based on its intimate association with the state, or the practical idealism of political materialism. Such oppression is true in the absolutist secular states of European and Asian communism. The trend of the new religion of scientific materialism is to exclude the mystical, evolutionary, and independent cultural motivations of all peoples, and to establish a political ideal of materialistic work effort in every area of society. Therefore, wherever this trend succeeds, human beings are devoted to individualistic motives and collectivist hopes for material progress that will ultimately permit every future individual to enjoy a prolonged lifespan of pleasurable self-fulfillment. Wherever conventional cultic or old-style religions are permitted to survive in secular societies, they are able to survive only by adapting to the new social and political idealism and the new knowledge. Thus, cultic religion has become more and more merely poetic restatement of humanistic psychological interpretations of man, and the mysteries of religion have become merely pre-scientific allegories for natural events that have now become banal truisms or closed cases in the continuing detective story of science. Certain fundamentalist religious beliefs remain at the less sophisticated levels of popular society, and such religious beliefs are generally regarded as a kind of harmless and ridiculous intoxication that has no real significance in the daily world or of sober social effort. I am not protesting that archaic religious institutions have ceased to be able to freely dominate mankind by intimate association with powers of state. I am protesting that a new, aggressively anti-religious, secular and materialistic philosophical trend is everywhere in league with the state, and the true religious or evolutionary spiritual wisdom teaching of the great adepts of the world is being prevented from achieving its rightful role as the dominant cultural motive of mankind. Indeed, the new church of scientific materialism is not, in this regard, any different from the old exoteric religions that were previously in league with state powers. The religious institutions that anciently achieved legitimacy and dominance through political association with exoteric church institutions that supported ideals comparable with the secular motives of the state. Those religious institutions are still present today as the allowable cults of Christianity, Judaism, Islam, and so forth, but the more basically secular religion of scientific materialism has superseded the authority of exoteric religion, and therefore, in most societies, the state is now designed in separation from the old cults, and, in many cases, the state and its new religion are in direct opposition to the old cults. Truly, the exoteric religions of the old world are archaic, and they are fast becoming obsolete. The obsolescence of the ancient exoteric religious conceptions is inevitable and not inherently wrong or regrettable. However, what is wrong and regrettable is the continued disposition in the institutions of popular secular society to exclude the esoteric wisdom of the evolutionary spiritual teaching of true adepts, ancient and modern. The exclusion of true or esoteric religion has been the business of the state since ancient times. At first, this was done via the establishment of the popular idealism of exoteric religions in religious institutions in league with the state. But in modern times, the same process is due by the strategic exclusion of conventional religious cultism, mystical idealism, and higher evolutionary wisdom from the mechanics of popular culture. Consider all of this carefully. Observe the dominant powers that influence, propagandize, and rule in our daily lives. Examine the strategies of your own opinions. Criticize the motives of your own desiring. Then you will see how urgent is the need that mankind awaken to a new cultural destiny. In the realm of popular culture, scientific and political materialism is in power, and the essence of official popular propaganda is fundamentally anti-religious and devoted to an exclusively materialistic interpretation of man and nature. The allowable or semi-official cults of the yet remaining religious establishment continue to serve as exoteric religious extensions of the secular state. But all non-establishment cults of free religious, mystical and spiritual experimentation and practice are constantly the subjects of negative propaganda in the popular communications media, and intellectual leaders are constantly agitating against esoteric and non-establishment religious cultism, and especially against the possibility that any religious or spiritual leader achieve a position of widespread influence and power in the midst of the secular order. Therefore, university intellectualism and popular criticism generally oppose, or at least work to maintain, the disposition of doubt relative to religion, religious institutions, mysticism, and the naturally dominant role of the living God and true spiritual masters in the esoteric culture of true religion. I am deeply dismayed by the trends of popular culture in our day, and I have grave concerns about the immediate future of the human world. The modern mechanics of political power and official propaganda are immense, and the common mind of even the most considerable intellects of our day is monstrously deficient in higher understanding and purpose. The people are full of righteous needs, but they are otherwise possessed by aggressively self-indulgent motives and all of the self-deluding conventions of the mob mind. I am awakened and committed to another understanding than the one that now and traditionally has motivated and controlled the human world. But I can do no more than teach by word and intimate demonstration. I have no worldly power to change mankind. My only power is the truth that I teach, and the love or sympathy that any man or woman may be moved to grant me as they consider and practice and change in community with me. Therefore, I can only plead and beg for your attention and for your understanding of the esoteric spiritual way that I teach. And if I am heard by many, then perhaps we can together demand real changes in the cultural basis of the social order, so that wisdom will at long last become the master of church and state.